Ladies and gentlemen, my name is TotalBiscuit. I'm here to ask and answer one simple question. WTF is this wonderful wobbly menu? Woo! Look at this. Yeah, it's Crysis, yeah. I'm doing a Crysis 3 video, obviously. We're going to focus on the single-player component for this particular presentation. What is Crysis 3? Yeah, about 3 of you don't know it. It is, of course, a series of computer stomping FPS from the guys at Crytek, published by EA. This is the 3rd in the series, presumably the end of the trilogy, one would think. Now, Crysis, of course, has a reputation, at least the original one did. The phrase, "but can it play Crysis?" has been bandied around to the point where it ceased to be funny about 4 years ago. Regardless, Crysis used to be a benchmark, and it kind of still is. It was a game that would tax your hardware to the limit. I remember getting my first high-end graphics card. It was quite some time ago. I believe it was actually a 480. And it was a pretty loud, pretty large card, huge power consumption, and I used it to play Crysis, and even then I couldn't crank it all the way up to max. Crysis 2, however, followed up and didn't really do the same thing, because for once they decided, you know what, Crysis didn't sell very well, and apparently was heavily pirated, so we really want to do a sequel and have it be on 360 and PlayStation 3 so we can actually make some money. It's hard to really blame them for that, but unfortunately it also resulted in the game looking less awesome. I did a video on it. I also did a video when they introduced the so-called HD texture pack, and well, let's just say that even with the HD texture pack, it didn't really look that great. I mean, it wasn't an awful-looking game, it was still a good-looking game, but it wasn't a Crysis-level-looking game. It wasn't that era-defining graphical fidelity. Now, the question is, can Crysis 3 actually recapture that? That's what I've been looking forward to seeing. The multiplayer beta didn't really indicate that it could, but that's multiplayer, and this is an entirely different animal. Now, for the video today, I'm going to show you this on high. This is, of course, one step below very high. The reason I can't show you very high is that on a 680, and this has been benchmarked by NVIDIA, so this is pretty standard, on my 3930K, which is the Sandy Bridge Extreme. It's a fairly decent CPU, all things considered. And I've got 32 gigs of really fast RAM, and I have a 680 on that system. Very high, with everything turned up to very high, on system spec very high, these presets, it will run at about 30 frames per second, which is not good enough. Now, on high, it's about 40 to 50, sometimes it goes up to 60, and I'm going to put texture resolution on very high, and I'm going to give you TXAA, which is a form of anti-aliasing, specific to NVIDIA cards, a fairly recent one. See, I've got it on medium. You have a lot of different options here. You can actually use 4 different types of AA. Pick your poison. See which one works best for you. And we can go to advanced graphics and show you the rest. You can go all the way up to very high on all of these. You can tweak a little bit more in the configs as well as the developer console if you so desire. Motion blur off because it's bad. We don't like that. We'll leave lens flares on because I'm a huge fan of J.J. Abrams. I mean, no, maybe not, but I like lens flares. Who the hell doesn't like lens flares, right? They're cool. If you mess around with stuff like post-processing and shadows, the chances are you're going to be able to get a lot more frames. But like any really high-spec game, unless you are running like triple SLI 690s or whatever, you're probably going to have to tweak it around a little bit. It's estimated that a 690 or SLI 680s can probably reach around 60 frames per second, but it's a pretty hardcore game. I expect performance to increase as they are able to optimize the drivers more, but right now it stands as one of the most demanding games on PC alongside PlanetSide and Witcher 2 on maximum graphics. The question is it any good? Well, what you probably didn't see here is the FOV slider. I just want to mention that because we will be going into that momentarily. It isn't here. Don't know where it went. I actually spoke to Crytek about this. I tweeted at their Crysis Twitter, which I might add was extremely fast to get back to me. And they said we had to remove it temporarily. It's coming back, but here's some console commands to tide you over. So I'll show you the console commands and I'll show you what you can do with them in a minute. Everything else is pretty much what you would expect. Keys fully rebindable. Don't know whether or not there's mouse acceleration. It's difficult to tell. Mouse sensitivity, of course, you can mess around with. It doesn't feel like there is, but it's often really tricky to tell whether or not there's actual acceleration. It often needs a lot of testing. Multiplayer is, of course, here, but if I decide to cover that, I did cover the beta of this, I will look into it in a separate video rather than this one. So let's get into it, shall we? This is, I think, a couple of hours into the campaign. As usual, WTF is a first impression series, should not be construed as a review or anything but. If you want to know more complete opinions, then please do go read or watch a review of someone that's actually beaten the game. This is merely my opinions based on what I've seen thus far. Alright, let's get in, shall we? Let's give it a bash. Oh, I am in a cave. Yeah, this is exciting. This is not very... Oh, yeah. Yes, it is. It's kind of pretty. So the whole thing takes place in this sort of urban jungle thing. And we're going to address the whole freedom of movement and the size of the areas momentarily. But before we do that, let's get the FOV out of the way, shall we? You might notice these guns are pretty big. Yeah, they're actually bloody huge, in fact. Look at the size of this pistol. It's ridiculous. He's like holding it about 3 inches away from his face. He wouldn't do that. But don't worry, because developer console to the rescue. Alright, so these are the 3 commands you need to know to have a nice Crysis experience. The default FOV, I believe, is 55. That is vertical. That is not horizontal. Horizontal and vertical FOV are completely different. 55 is about 80 FOV. Not quite as high as I like, so I want to go about 65. There's FOV calculators online. Bad Company 2 had the same thing. PlanetSide also uses vertical FOV, and it's gonna... Your mileage is gonna vary based on the size of your monitor and the aspect ratio that you play at. CL FOV 65 is what I like. You want to see the default. This is what the default looks like. You can see it pushes everything in a little bit. You can go pretty extreme with this. Want to go 85? Sure. Want to go 100? Yeah, you can do 100. No, you can't, actually. You can go to about 80, as you can see, is the maximum. 80 on a monitor like this is probably about 120, 130 FOV, which is way more than you need. But you'll notice that the gun model didn't change. How intriguing. That is interesting, isn't it? Well, it is for me. Maybe I'm just the only one that's enthusiastic about that idea. So that's 55, and then we're going to go 60, 65. Oh, look, the gun is about the same size. That's because you need a different command to change the gun models, which are way, way too bloody big, and this is the same problem that Crysis had. So you do that by going r_draw near FOV. So what's its default? 55. Tell that by typing that in. Let's go 65. Oh look, that's a bit more manageable. Still too big. Let's go 80. Not Fox, jackass. No, that's a bit more reasonable. You hold your pistol at arm's length, not 3 inches away from your face. The bow is not so absurd, although it still takes a bloody huge amount of your screen up, regardless of how large you go. You want to go more extreme? Alright. Whee! There we go. That is dreadful. Don't do that. But, yes, you can go pretty crazy with it. There's one last command you need to know. This is for sprinting. And that is all the way back here. There you go. A little bit complicated, so I suggest you write that down. That's the default sprinting FOV. It's around 65, which is... That's actually totally fine. But you might want to tweak it. Basically, it means when you start sprinting, it's going to do some weird zoom stuff. You want to watch out for that. Alright, so, yeah. It would be good if they put this stuff in the options menu. It's already here, so I don't see why they couldn't patch it in. Thankfully, you can at least mess around with it. Just bear in mind that your weapon models have a tendency to reset in size, so you might have to do that more often than not. Thankfully, if you just press up, then you can get your previous commands back. So, let's just make sure that, yeah, there we go. So I'm going to make sure that this is my latest command, just in case I need to mess with it. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, let's actually get into it. So, entering one of the reasonably large-sized levels here. And kind of similar to Crysis 2, this game is a mixture of corridor shooting and these large open sort of arenas that you can approach in pretty much any way you want. Rather than it being just this big urban area, you've got a lot more wildlife that's kind of reclaimed the city of New York here, as you can see, which is nice because that means you've got a lot more color. That's something that I really, really liked in the original Crysis, the amount of color that was actually being put into the game. I was very, very happy with that. Alright, let's play around with the bow, shall we? Bow can be customized, and it is, of course, the flagship weapon of this game. You've seen it on the front of the box, no doubt, in all of the marketing stuff. You can adjust the draw weight. You can also put 4 different types of ammunition in it. I want to kill someone that happens to be hanging around in the water. Then one of these electrical arrows is pretty much ideal for that. I want to blow somebody up. Well, you've got air burst, and you've got super thermite. They're both pretty good at that, but you don't really get an awful lot of those. Plus, since they explode, you can't really pick them up again. The carbon impact tip arrows are some of the best when it comes to just one-shotting pretty much anything. Now, what this does is it gives a huge boost to the stealth playstyle. Because in this game, you can wander around with the bow, you can shoot with it, it's not going to drain energy. Silenced weapons will allow you to fire, but it does drain energy while you're doing so. So this is way, way better for stealth. Absolutely fantastic for that. And you can one-shot people with it. And not only that, but you can go to the corpse and collect the arrow again. So it's pretty hardcore. Well, I decloaked. That guy managed to spot me pretty much instantly, so I'm dead. Now, you might notice that I died pretty quickly there. That's because the difficulty level that this has just gone on to is either Post-Human Warrior, which is the maximum difficulty, which is an absolute frickin' nightmare, or it went on to Super Soldier, which is also really, really hard. I could change to Veteran here. There we go. Now, Veteran's actually going to give me a crosshair, and this is a nice difficulty. Normal to me is too easy. Veteran is a good one. Post-Human Warrior is just ridiculous. Like, at that point, it actually does genuinely become a stealth game. And it's pretty crazy, because even with maximum armor on, you die incredibly fast on any of those difficulty levels. I mean, even on the difficulty that I just showed you right there, it was pretty intense. You can only take a couple of bullets before you go down. Just not exactly what you expect in your superhuman suit, is it? Here you go, have some electricity. This weapon really is the Swiss Army knife of everything, isn't it? Alright, let's tag where my enemies are. This is the visor mode, allows you to tag the positions of your enemies. Very, very useful indeed if you want to plan your approach, especially in these larger open areas. You can also, of course, use nanovision, just like previously, which will give you that nice thermal view of things. He's managed to spot me. I want to kind of displace and change position here because they will start to flush you out with grenades, just like Crysis 2, although they're a little bit crazier with them this time around. They really, really like to shoot grenades at you in this version of the game. They'll just throw... I've had an entire squad throw grenades at me all at the same time, which was just ridiculous. Absolutely crazy. There you go. Have some of that. Oh god, that's another one. Thankfully, I had maximum armor on, so I was able to eat a little bit of that. Now, these guys do actively hunt you, as far as I can tell. The funny thing is, I've been hearing some stuff about the AI, and I've been looking around for instances of the AI being an utter dumbass, and generally speaking, I'm not seeing that. I mean, they will generally sweep your previous position. That's what they're known for. That's what they will do. That's pretty much their standard tactic if you're wandering around cloaked. Which you should be, because otherwise you will more often than not die horribly. Looks like we're going to get shot at. Alright, that's fine. I'm just engaging a little bit of firefighting. Nice bit of kick on this weapon, by the way. Especially with the scope. That's actually quite good. It's not a lot. There wasn't a lot of kick in the multiplayer beta on some of the guns, I noticed. This seems like it's got an awful lot more of it. Is this gun model still... Yeah, see, this is what I was talking about with the resetting. For some reason, the gun model size resets for random reasons every now and again. I think it's every time you reload the game or you restart because you died, which is less than ideal, to say the least. This is sort of the Crysis 1 gun model size. The standard is more like the Crysis 2 gun model size, which is not really that great. But AI-wise, I haven't really noticed anything particularly bad. Nothing as... I love the way they'll kind of spray at you when they don't really know exactly where you are. That's pretty cool. I haven't noticed anything out of the ordinary terrible. You know, I mean, this is not Aliens Colonial Marines worthy nonsense. It just... The soldiers are a little bit dumb from time to time, but on this difficulty level, it doesn't really matter. If you're playing on a low difficulty, then I can definitely see why the AI would bother you, but on this difficulty level, you're going to die in a couple of bullets, so the AI isn't really all that much of a concern. I mean, that guy spotted me from all the way over there, which is totally reasonable. I mean, you know, he's got a gun with a scope. Of course he can do that. Sneaking around, you've got to be super careful. However, one of the biggest issues I've got with the combat, which, you know, is not saying a huge... I mean, it's not saying a huge amount because really, I don't have that many massive problems with the combat. I still find it very, very fun, and we'll go on to a lot of the positive stuff in a minute. But it seems like the games have become way more stealth-orientated than they otherwise would have. And just because there's been a massive buff to stealth in the form of the bow. Yeah, the bow is really, really good. Hugely good. It one-shots pretty much anything as far as I can tell. You can adjust the draw weight and you have loads of different types of ammunition. Also, if you go and retrieve your ammo, you essentially have infinite ammo. As you can see, I'm sort of being penned in here. You'll often have guys come up behind you and you've got to keep an eye on your minimap. It's pretty good. Now, since on higher difficulty levels you die very, very quickly, and you can't just run around with... See, like that, you know, you die pretty quickly. You can't just run around with maximum armor on and hope to actually win. This means that you are herded towards taking the stealth approach, not the direct fire approach. Now, on normal, you can grab a heavy weapon and run around like a badass, but you go up against any more than a couple of dudes in this difficulty mode, and you're gonna start to run into problems. Now, this may bother some people, because they were looking for a game which allows them all of those playstyles. And I don't think this game really does necessarily allow you all those playstyles unless you're really, really good. Once again, you see the problem with that, right? Now, I just probably need to suck less, really. But the game... I mean, do you see how quickly I died there? That was pretty quick. That was just a little salvo. And that is only on difficulty 3 of 5.
Okay, Romeo 1.
Imagine how... Actually, I think this is reset to difficulty 4 by the looks of it. Yeah, it has, because... the reason I know this is because difficulty 4 doesn't have a crosshair. So you turn it to difficulty 3. There we go. So, yeah, that's difficulty 4. Imagine what difficulty 5 is like. Yeah, it's just... It's a freaking nightmare. It really, really is. Unbelievably difficult. Well, if you wanted a challenge, then you're bloody well gonna get it, but only if you play this game as kind of a stealth action game. The power of the bow and its versatility means that really you don't actually need to use any other weapon. And since the bow is on a separate button, you always have it. Now, there's plentiful arrows found around the place, so you don't really have to scavenge too much. And since you can get your ammo back, you don't really have to worry. Let's get a thermite arrow on. I'm just going to pop it in their general direction. Lol. I mean, the thermite arrows pretty much kill in one shot. These definitely kill in one shot. It's like, oh, I'm cloaked, I'm cloaked, I'm cloaked, and if I actually aimed properly. Even on the lower draw weights, most of the standard soldiers die pretty quickly from these things. I'm messing up completely here. I need to be careful. Oh, come on! So much for bad AI. I mean, where the hell are people getting that from? It's like, yeah, these guys seriously try and flush you out all the time. There you go, you can have one of those. Oh, you want a grenade? Okay. Yeah, that can be arranged. Let's put maximum armor on. Alright, let's switch out to something a little bit heavier. There we go, and we can finish him off. I mean, you go up against one opponent with maximum armor on, you can pretty much fight them no problem at all. But if you're caught without maximum armor on, then, you know, just expect to be destroyed. There we go. What I will say is, thankfully, the enemies aren't bullet sponges on higher difficulty levels. But I think that the power of the bow is something that may concern a lot of people, because, you know, it's fun the first few times you use it, but otherwise it's kind of a fairly boring playstyle, I feel. The stealth isn't really challenging in this game. As long as you move fairly slowly and you have your cloak on, unless, of course, you get hit by an EMP grenade or some of the more specialized tracking devices in the game, you're pretty much invisible, and they're not going to find you unless you get right up in their face. So it's easy to stick a silencer on your weapon, and then just pop someone in the back of the head, and then recloak, pop someone else in the back of the head. And for some people, that's going to be totally fine. That's actually going to be a really enjoyable experience. For others who are looking for a super-powered FPS, you probably want to end up playing on a lower difficulty level, because it... Good lord, where the hell did he come from? Armor on. You see, these guys can really sneak up on you. You gotta be careful. How did I not kill him? Wow, I guess I wasn't aiming for the head. That's my problem. Alright, son. Good lord, he's from the side. Jeez! So much for, again, so much for bad AI. Anyone that's claiming that is talking out of their arse. Oh, it's reset the difficulty again. Good lord. That's irritating. I'm not showing this off well, am I? I might need to turn the difficulty down so that I can actually focus on it. I say, you know, this is a pretty challenging difficulty. I think normal certainly isn't. You basically become a god of death. You know, I'm just gonna go C4 that area. Why not? So, do you want the stealth aspect? You know, because if you don't want the stealth aspect, you kind of going to be screwed on the higher difficulty levels. If you're okay with the stealth aspect, or you're in fact looking for it, then you will get it. But I still wouldn't call the stealth aspect anywhere near as good as, say, stealth in Dishonored, for instance. You do have a reasonable amount of mobility, because you can jump pretty high, and you can grab onto stuff, and, you know, everything's kind of fine there. Seriously? Good lord. Are you kidding me? Screw it, I'm gonna have to turn this difficulty down so I can actually show you more of the game. This is absurd. I don't believe it. I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I kind of suck at games when I'm commentating, but even then, this is just silly. Lord. Here you go, you can have that, and then we'll go cloak, and then we're just gonna go pick them off. There you go, have some of that. I love how that helicopter just didn't bother to track me. It's like, yeah, you know, it's fine, don't worry about it. Alright, so that's him taken out, and cloak lasts for a fairly decent amount of time when you're rolling around on a normal difficulty, so not exactly tricky. I'm just gonna head around this direction. You can see they are following me. Let's just identify their positions. This is the kind of difficulty you want to be on for run and gun, yeah? Because you can take quite a few hits, your energy recharges at a reasonable rate, so it's you know, it's not too difficult, certainly. I like the way this gun kicks, it's pretty nice. Actually a little bit too nice. God, what am I doing today? Absolutely dreadful. Let's talk about the positives of the combat. Feels meaty, very meaty. Good gun models, good kick, and of course, absolutely awesome graphics. I mean, it's hard to argue that this is a bad-looking game. Anyone that does is just trying to be super edgy and dumb, yeah? So don't even listen to them. I mean, this game is absolutely beautiful. Texture quality is really, really nice. Ground textures. There are occasionally textures which are a bit rubbish. I mean, even this, which is like something that you wouldn't consider to be too important a texture, is a pretty good-looking texture. Like, this is high resolution here. The ground texture's really nice high-resolution stuff. Water looks absolutely gorgeous. I love the ripple effects when you go in. That's absolutely fantastic. Shoot that, and there's a nice kick there as well, so that's pretty good. And overall, thanks to the fact that they've gone for this whole urban jungle look, there's a lot more diversity in environments this time around, whether it be inside facilities or just these weird sort of field areas that where nature has taken over again, I suppose is probably the best way to describe it. You've got more variety than you did in Crysis 2, which was mostly corridors and city. The city has become a jungle, which is pretty slick. Speaking of pretty slick, down you go. You can see how powerful that frickin' bow is. There we go. Let's gonna head in this direction and actually get inside the facility so you can see what's going on there. So it is definitely one of the best looking games I've ever seen. There are some really, really nice scenes. This is pretty average in terms of good looking stuff, but it's still a really nice looking level. Lots of green, lots of detail, pretty high quality textures. Occasional ones where you're like, I mean, even this one, that's still pretty good. Like, that's better than Crysis 2. Significantly better than Crysis 2. So even where the actual... even when the textures really don't have to be all that good, they're still pretty good anyway. I'm going to identify a few targets so that I can move closer here. And you do get that original Crysis feel of, right, okay, let's mark some targets, let's figure out my approach, instead of just running straight through corridors or... Crysis 2 was a lot of long, big corridors in the form of streets, yeah? They were still corridors, one way or the other. There were some more open areas, certainly, but this game seems to have more of them. However, the game does definitely not start out on the best of notes, because it starts off in very much a corridor shooter kind of environment where you are following one of the previous characters from the previous games, who I might add is an exceptional highlight in the writing. He's really, really cool. And, you know, I was always a fan of him. He was a good character. And I think you'll very much enjoy his presence in the game. But unfortunately, it does fall into the trap of certain games whereby it's like, oh yeah, you... God, this guy's keeping his head down when I'm suppressing him. I mean, that's pretty cool in my opinion. So instead of being a jackass and sticking his head up so that I can shoot him. You know, again, what is this whole... This, you know, it's got bad AI thing going on. Where is that coming from? Is that just something I'm not noticing later on in the game? I don't know, maybe. There are some sections in the game whereby you are stuck behind that character as he opens the door for you. There aren't that many. Most of them you can do, and some of them are even nicely explained away in the dialogue. But even then, it's like, God, I don't want this in my Crysis. Especially since I just played Far Cry 3, right? And Far Cry 3 has this huge amount of freedom. Far Cry 3 is an open-world shooter. And this has got a bit more direction to it. Now, some people might absolutely hate that. And I don't necessarily blame them, because that's maybe just what they weren't looking for from their game. There you go, you're gonna have one of them. This pistol is a beast, by the way. Come on. Yeah, splat. There we go, very satisfying. There's not a massive amount of it, but every time I run into that problem of, oh, you're a nano-augmented super soldier alien hybrid thingy, and yeah, we're gonna have you wait until we open this door for you. It's like, I could punch my way through this. Come on. You know, there's no need for that at all. There's also this hacking mechanic, as you can see. It's just a little mini game. It allows you to open various things. You can also hack things at a distance. Actually reminds me of the Syndicate FPS. And you can do stuff like hack turrets, and that's all good. In this case, I'm just going to throw a grenade in there to deal with it. Generally speaking, you don't want to try and hack something while it's shooting you. That's a pretty bad idea, all things considered. I think we're going to get out of scope mode on this thing, and let's switch on over to a reflex sight. We'll put the silencer on it as well. And a nanosuit upgrade kit available there. Very, very cool. So the upgrade system here, as you can see, kind of consists of 4 different categories, and you can customize your set and then save the set, which will allow you to switch between these different packages. I have threat detector here. Super stealth would probably be pretty nice. Highlights enemy footprints, that could be super useful. Oh, these guys are not going to let me mess around in my menus. How very, very impolite. They came up behind me. I'm going to gun him down before I proceed. Yeah, sit down, you. Thank you very much. There are a lot of soldiers, a lot of troops in this game. They will keep coming at you. They will keep flanking you as well. And you know, they don't just sit around on this weird patrol path and then not come and help out their friends that have been gunned down, assuming that they know about it. They will hunt you. That's pretty cool. But you can also, of course, become the hunter, simply because you have that cloak and you have that great ability to snipe people off with the bow. As a shooter so far, I'm finding this pretty damn satisfying, I've got to say. And it's mostly just because of the weight of the weapons and how satisfying it is to get headshots, and there's a decent variety of weapons available as well. The bow definitely adds to the game. I just think that it's a little bit too good at what it does, and as a result, especially since you always have it, you're very much encouraged to just use it all the time. I have a feeling that this thing right here is going to become super obnoxious. Oh, you know what I want to do? Yeah.
What the hell?
That was kind of dumb. I probably should have put armor on before I did that. But it was fun, right? I'm gonna have to resize his bloody guns again. I hate that. They need to make that a menu option. You have a good amount of ways of approaching an objective. And if you want to know the difference between stuff like Crysis and an MMS, yeah, and a modern military shooter like Medal of Honor or Call of Duty, for the most part, pretty much forces you to approach an objective in a very specific way, and then forces you to press F to do stuff. And you know what's not very fun? Yeah, that's actually not very fun at all. So, in this game, I can do a lot of stuff. I could just go and stab him in the back, I could shoot him, I could blow him up, and in some of those areas that I was showing you earlier, you saw all sorts of possibilities. Which was really, really nice. It's like, alright, if I want to be stealthy, I can do that. If I want to set up some intricate trap with a bunch of C4 and lure them in, I can do that too. And it gives me this sort of... Hello. Oh, that's gonna hurt. It gives me that nice little sort of Deus Ex-y vibe, even though it's not actually Deus Ex. Oh, the Typhoon and this gun. This is a 10-barreled stacked... I believe it's a flechette rifle. It's pretty ridiculous. I'm gonna go hack this, get access to it. So you do have all sorts of different ways to approach objectives, and that to me is what makes the game really fun. Now, you do enter these areas that are a little bit linear at times, certainly. This one's okay because it kind of lets you do your objectives in whatever way you want. There's a couple of generators you've got to take down here, and this whole dam area is sort of your oyster. You can go pretty much wherever you want. You needn't go swimming in the water, which is a valid strategy, I might add. It's actually a pretty good idea for evading enemies. Just want to jump off here right into the water. And this is the kind of thing that you occasionally saw in Crysis 2, like, say, the harbor section in Crysis 2 very much had that. And it's good, because these areas are designed to give you a certain degree of freedom. They're not completely open world, but I feel they're a nice compromise. It seems like there's a bit more of this in Crysis 3 than there is in Crysis 2, and a lot of people did object to the lack of open world that was available there. You also have these little Deus Ex elements whereby it's like, oh, there's vents you can crawl through to access this area, or I could just go through the front door. Both of these are totally viable. I could bypass some combat. I could stealth. I could just gun my way through. There's a couple of heavy weapons there on the bridge. I could just rip them off their pedestals and just go gun people down with that. That's pretty good too. And all in all, this just, for the most part, is very, very satisfying to play. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm not gonna lie, I am having a lot of fun with it. I think it's a lot better than Crysis 2. I feel the variety in areas really helps. I feel that the emphasis on more open stuff really helps. I am a little bit disappointed that they didn't make the suit a bit more complex. It's like there's a lot of really passive stuff with the suit. Maximum strength hasn't made its return, so you want to punch people into the stratosphere, that's not something you can really activate. I mean, hell, in Crysis 1 you could punch down a house. No, quite literally, some of the shacks you just punch to death. Now, some of that's automatic, some of it's passive these days. It would have been nice to be able to turn that on. Also, maximum speed, you know? This is just sprint, this doesn't actually burn any energy whatsoever, so this is not particularly fast, which is not all that impressive. I want maximum speed back. I want to be able to run so fast that it hurts me when I hit something. Because that's what maximum speed was like in the first game. It's just like, you could have put more stuff in there, and it comes to a point where I'm thinking, was it because consoles don't have that many buttons that this is the case? You know, it's always pretty hard to say. Do I want to swap my C4 for a rocket launcher? Hell yeah, I do. Thank you very much. Very nice. I wonder if you can customize this thing. Probably not. You can hit someone with it, but it's not really all that useful. Hack our way through here so we don't set off the alarms. And then we go blow something up with a rocket launcher. Sweet. So, the campaign length, according to most people, is somewhere between 6 and 10 hours. Depending on how long you actually spend. Let's put the cloak on. Yeah. Can I hit him? Can I hit him? Can I hit him? Just wait for him to slow down a bit. And... yeah. Yeah, I can hit him. Little giggles of glee. Will you stop that? It's very rude. There was a sniper rifle there earlier. I could have just sniped all of these guys, but you know what? I'd much rather go for the direct action approach. This is what you can do on normal mode. Yeah? You can take a lot of hits, and you can choose between the direct action and the stealth approach. It is unfortunate, though, because I think it is a little bit too easy, and I would just like one more difficulty level where I can probably go gung-ho if I'm pretty good at the game, but I still need to watch out. In this case, I can pretty much go gung-ho a lot, and it's fine, because these guys probably aren't going to be able to kill me unless I do something really stupid. There you go, one in the face there. Your armor holds out for a decent amount of time, so you don't need to worry too much about that. But then if I go up to veteran, it's like, well, you really should be playing this game in stealth, and if you don't, you're probably gonna get destroyed. And then anything higher than that, it's like, you're not playing in stealth, you are super boned, son. And I don't know if I really signed up for a stealth FPS. I signed up for one where you're supposed to be able to have the choice, but it seems like on the higher difficulty levels you don't really have the choice, which is unfortunate. Hee. That's where my last position was. That's where they think I am. This is where I am. Yeah, you go away. And we're gonna turn on armor, and we're gonna mow them down with this thing. It's a beastly weapon, but my god, does it run out of ammo quickly. Holy crap. Oh, you're gonna do that to me? What the? What? Huh? It mounted me the other way? Oh dear. I'm actually probably gonna die here, because I'm a dumbass. Ah! Stupid. I thought, I'm gonna get on the gun and gun out the turret. Oh, wait, it's facing in the other direction. I am stupid. Good lord. I'm not finding a huge amount to complain about, really. There's little things here and there, like the overly scripted nature of some parts of the game kind of gets on my nerves, but then there's these longer sections where that doesn't happen, so that's really not a big deal. I'm just going to go out through the vent again, actually, because then I don't have to worry about those alarms and things like that. Some people will say, well, you know, God, that looks good. Look at that. I'm sorry. That looks real. That looks real. My driveway doesn't look as realistic as that. Anyway, sorry. It's pretty difficult not to marvel at it at times. This is only on a high. You know, very high is even more beautiful than this. But, you know, the introduction of that character, that, again, I don't want to spoil who it is because he's pretty awesome, sort of leading you by the nose at times, is actually okay to me because he's a cool character, and I don't really mind. There's not a lot of characters in this game, really. Oh, that guy spotted me pretty much instantly. I guess he ate his Weetabix this morning. Should maybe tag a few more of these guys so I know where they are. I'm gonna get hit by a frag grenade, aren't I? Let's armor up. No problem. These are little things. These are little problems in what is otherwise a really enjoyable shooter, in my opinion. The difference between this and those games like Call of Duty and like Medal of Honor is that even though it is a linear game, you do still have some choice about how you actually approach certain objectives. Not a huge amount, but you get some. Yeah, and it's okay. And if you do dumb things, I think it's reset the difficulty level again, by the way. Because I'm suddenly taking a lot more damage than I was used to. Oh, jeez, this is getting messy. Need to recharge my energy here. And then I'll be able to get out. It gives you enough choice to think, oh, I can kind of think about this game and I can consider my path and I don't just run and go my way through the whole thing and it's not just on rails. And to me that's kind of enough, yeah? If I want to play an open world shooter, I will go and play Far Cry 3. And Far Cry 3 had some of its own problems even though it was a really, really good game. If I'm totally honest with you. You know, I explained the problems in the game when I did that video. But for what it is, I think Crysis 3 is really a lot of fun. It could get worse later on. Hey, you know, you're watching a first impressions video. If you take this as a review, you're a dumbass. This is based on what I've seen in the first couple of hours of the game. For what it is, I think it's really, really good. It's definitely one of the better campaign shooters I've played lately, and that's mostly because most campaign shooters end up being MMS. They end up being those super linear, on-rails nonsense games that are more about the set pieces and that are more about the Hollywood action nonsense than they are about actual thinking and interesting and challenging gameplay. Alright, let's get rid of this. There's also a lot of other nice things, nods to the PC. The fact that you can skip the tutorial is wonderful. It's just a section that you can just turn off. It's like, skip tutorial? Yes. Oh, great, so I just get to start the game instead of doing a stupid tutorial segment. That's great. Most games don't let me do that. A lot of cutscenes, at least at the start of the game, you get this option that pops up that says, press enter to skip to gameplay. That's wonderful. That's really, really nice. Most of the cutscenes can be skipped once the game has loaded. So that's not too bad either. So, you know, little nods to what an FPS should be, in my opinion. And it seems like Crytek have learned a lot from their mistakes in Crysis 2, and as a direct result, they have made what is, in my opinion, a much better game. A much more superior game, a more interesting, more challenging game. It is not the open world shooter that Crysis 1 was, even though I feel that some of the non-linearity of Crysis 1 could definitely be over-exaggerated. Yes, you could wander around an island, but there were definitely areas where you certainly shouldn't have been, and wandering off the beaten track completely really wasn't as possible as most people made it out to be. It wasn't Far Cry 3 in that respect. But it was definitely more open world than this thing was. But this is a pleasant kind, certainly pleasant kind of linear. This is the kind of story that I want to ride in. Now, speaking of the story, this is something I'm not usually interested in, but I am pretty compelled by it thus far. I think the character of Prophet is a really interesting notion. I don't really want to spoil it for those of you who haven't played the previous games. There is a nice previously on Crysis video in the game that you can watch, which sort of reminds you of what's going on, which is good, because I kind of forgot. But I think the character of Prophet's really intriguing. Also the way that he interacts with the other few characters in the game. There's not a lot of main characters that this game actually has. You know, there's like 3 or 4. But the way that he interacts with them is very interesting. The visions that he's having, the sort of... He's got this idea that something catastrophic's about to happen. Really, no one actually believes him. They're more focused on the immediate threat. And the fact that he's not human anymore. We don't really know what he is, and he doesn't really know what he is, but the whole notion is that he sacrificed a lot to basically beat the opposition, the aliens, in the first couple of games, and he's not human anymore, and he doesn't really know what he is, you don't really know what he is, and all he seems to be is a weapon of war, and yet you still sympathize with him. And I think that the dialogue and the mistrust as well, like going on right here, for instance.
People have names. You have a call sign and a goddamn serial number.
And without me, you don't have a goddamn chance. So we both make the best of it. I need a sit rep.
Roger that. Cell's high-altitude defense system is completely offline, but it's not over. In fact, it's probably gonna get worse.
Cell's in full retreat, but they'll hold up at the Nexus base. Cell will probably try and turn this whole area into a kill zone. Watch out.
There you go. You see that kind of distrust. Because they don't really know what he is. And that's a really nice element. It's not just, hey, you are super action hero, come to save the day. We're really grateful you're here. It's like, we don't even know what you are. You might turn on us at any moment. We're using you because we really have no choice. And it's like, what is the greater threat here? And I'm intrigued to see where the story goes. I really am. Because especially based on the opening of the game, there's some crazy shiz about to go down. And Crysis has always kind of been about crazy shiz, but certainly in Crysis 1, the introduction of the aliens actually kind of ruined the game. And here, if they do anything crazy, I hope that they do a better job with it. But what I can definitely say is that as an FPS, and as an interesting story, and of course as a technical showpiece, I am thus far very impressed by Crysis 3. I have heard some problems like input lag, for instance. I have heard of people complaining about the AI, saying it's brain dead. Again, I just haven't seen that. Maybe I just got lucky. That's a possibility. I think that the bow and its nature is kind of OP and arguably affects the game design too much and puts way too much emphasis on stealth. I would have liked them to have also given you more tools to work with if you wanted to take the brute force approach. Currently, you don't have more tools to work with. You've got the guns the game has. Occasionally, you can use a Ceph weapon, which is pretty neat. But in the first 2 hours of the game, I've only got to shoot one once, which is a little bit disappointing. Those are the guns that you saw very much in... Let's see, who do I want to take out here? You saw them in the multiplayer. They were kind of drops. They were stuff that you could get. Do you really need to track the deer? I mean, come on. That's hilarious. Oh, man. Oh, I'm about to decloak. I better get in cover. That would be bad. Was he killed by a deer? Well, there's a possibility. Who knows? Let's stay in cover. I would have definitely liked to see more offensive options other than what we've already had. Yeah, we've already had the notion of being able to pull weapons off of their mounts. You can still do that. We've already had the notion of big guns and maximum armor mode. You know, what else can you give me that lets me do more offensive gameplay? The only thing that I've really seen that lets you do that in a decent big way is certain skills, yeah? So if you go here, you'll notice that there's certain skills like faster health regeneration, there's deflection, armors you up, brute force, and you can go light armor, you can also go heavy armor. So, you know, you can be a bit more stumpy here and there. I would have liked to see more tools. These are the kind of things that you saw in Crysis 2. But I'm still having a bunch of fun with it. Would I recommend it? Well, you know, based on the first 2 hours, I would. I'm having fun. It's a beautiful, beautiful game, although we should probably address the elephant in the room, and that's its performance. I would expect it's going to get better in future patches and future driver updates for your graphics card, but this is a hefty game. You want to play this on high or any more than that, you're going to need a high-end graphics card. it might be a game that you want to play on console if you don't have a decent machine. You can scale it, definitely, and it even looks good on medium. It looks pretty much like this on medium. Not quite as detailed, you know, obviously texture quality is a little bit lower, but you can mess with it here and there, and I'd recommend that you try and tweak it to your liking. But I personally like to play my games at 60 frames per second, and I'm running a high-end graphics card. If you're running a low-end graphics card, you may not get that option, which would kind of suck for you. There you go. I'm gonna go get my arrows back, I think. That is the elephant in the room. It's always been the elephant in the room when it comes to Crysis, less so in Crysis 2, but definitely with Crysis 1 and 3. What I will say is that it seems like Crytek have really sort of come into their own in terms of making games rather than just technical showpieces. This in itself is a really good shooter, whereas some would argue that Crysis was more of a technical showpiece than a good game. Crysis 2, they tried to make it a better game, but they sacrificed on the technical side of things. In this game, they managed to pull off both. And I like it. I like it a lot. This is the kind of game that I would happily play to completion, beat the campaign, and say, you know what, I had fun here. This was worthy of my time. Okay, I guess we just had an example of bad AI. It's like, really? Did he manage to miss me? I'm not all that well hidden. I guess he did. I thought he was running for his life. I mean, that's a possibility too. I think he's actually trying to run away by the looks of it. Alright, we can fix that, don't worry. Punch him in the face. There we go. Very, very cool. Alright, I'm out of here. It's not bad. It's pretty good. I don't think it... If I've got one the biggest complaint I think I've got on this is that they don't really try to innovate in any way. It's a good game in the same way that Crysis 2 was a good game. I think it's a better game than Crysis 2. But honestly, they don't change all that much. It's very much a sequel. It's very iterative. They haven't really done a lot with it. But if you wanted more Crysis for single player, then I don't think you can really be disappointed by Crysis 3. I don't see how you could be. Plus as a benchmark, well, you want to see really nice slimy rocks? Well, we got you covered here, good lord. You want to see nice water? We got you covered. Want to see some awesome particle effects, great lighting, and some really amazing vistas? We got you covered. Alright, that's pretty much about everything I want to say about Crysis 3 single player, honestly. Crysis, of course, is available on Origin. You can buy it on stuff like Gamersgate, but it will lock to your Origin account anyway, as do most of the new... Oh wow, can I gun down squirrels? I am the worst person. Can I pick up the squirrel and throw it with maximum strength? No. Okay, game gets 1 out of 10 for that. Anyway, yeah, it's available on Origin. It's $60 or your regional equivalent there. You cannot find this game on Steam because EA don't do that anymore. You can buy it in a box and you'll get an Origin code, same as usual. And I might do a video on the multiplayer. I don't know. I'll play a bit of it and I'll see whether or not I think that it's changed sufficiently from the beta to really warrant another look. But the single player is a lot of fun, and as a technical achievement, it is a marvel. As a game, it's really good. It's not amazing, it's not incredible, but it's really, really good. And really good is okay for me. You know, I don't necessarily need every game to be Citizen Kane. I just want a really good FPS, and that's exactly what I get here with Crysis 3. My name's been TotalBiscuit, taking a look at Crysis 3 single player. And I will see you next time.